CNN panels are becoming increasingly tense as the election draws near, and two recent examples feature Washington Post columnist Catherine Rampell visibly triggering and humiliating the smuggest Trump supporter in mainstream media, Scott Jennings, and it's glorious, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video. There's a very recent example of a rematch between Catherine Rampell and Scott Jennings. Jennings has featured in previous videos of mine. He is, in my opinion, the smuggest Trump sycophant in mainstream media, smugger than even anyone on Fox News. Laura Ingraham, Jesse Waters, Sean Hannity, they all pale in comparison to this loser here. So I have a bunch of clips in which this woman here, Catherine Rampell of the Washington Post, she's also been a guest on Real Time with Bill Maher, just humiliates this guy with relentless fact checks. And we're going to play these clips and unpack them together.
Here, so I think it's an unfair attack on Trump, this minimum wage worker issue. Because
McDonald's is not the only employer in America. You know that, right? Like, there are lots of other service jobs.
Am I arguing that they are?
But shouldn't he be able to answer
You sat here and attacked him for attacking minimum wage workers because he went to McDonald's, and I just wanted to point out how wrong he was.
She did not do that.
I didn't attack him for going to McDonald's. I attacked him for his actual record, which is bad for the workers of McDonald's.
But the reason you're sitting here is because he went to McDonald's.
The reason I'm sitting here is because I write on economic policy and I know something about the economic policy.
I guess this is where I need to be clear.
So again, you can just see Scott with his, but you can see his face is colored at the moment. It's red. There's tension there. He's pissed. He's upset. And he had the temerity to accuse a liberal of attacking minimum wage workers and suggesting that Donald Trump, a New York billionaire real estate mogul, is actually the people's champion. It's funny because when Donald Trump was at McDonald's for this carefully staged and finely choreographed political stunt, in which he just showed up for a few minutes, served pre-screened, pre-selected Trump supporters at a window, he was asked by reporters about the minimum wage, whether or not he would support raising it, because he's opposed that in the past. And his party is much more oppositional to minimum wage increases than the Democrats. And when asked about it, Trump would refuse to answer the question. He refused to commit to increasing the minimum wage. So Scott Jennings' defense of Trump here is as dishonest and categorically ludicrous as a defense of Trump can possibly be. And before we play the next clip, I should say, Scott Jennings got a lot of backlash for this particular clip on Twitter. Yes, Catherine Rampell, she always makes me laugh with her intelligence and wit, praising Rampell. Why do you continue to pay Scott Jennings to treat women like this and lie to your viewers, CNN? Is this a feature, not a bug, of the types of panels you want? Hey, Scott Jennings, your misogyny is showing. I hope you're embarrassed about your whiny outbursts and offer the apology she deserves. This is one reason CNN is unwatchable. Scott Jennings is a smug clown troll. He's a piece of shit. Just one of the few reasons I've refused to watch CNN anymore. Scott Jennings is so corny and weird. One of my favorite is from Adam Park Menico. This cannot be overstated. Scott Jennings is the biggest little whiny ass lying bitch you will ever meet. Pardon the spicy language, but you can see he got quite a bit of backlash for his ridiculous triggering and triggered response to Catherine Rampell. But there's more. Here's some other clips of Scott Jennings being humiliated on live TV.
Been a champion for IVF.
He has not.
He has.
I'm sorry,
absolutely
I need to interrupt.
He absolutely has. You don't need to interrupt because you're wrong. He has been a champion in the party.
People watching, I wrote about this like 2 weeks ago. You can look at.
Well, I listen to what he says all the time. He
has
read a statement in the middle.
I look at his
You believe him when he says he's a father of IVF? When he says he's a father of IVF?
Catherine finish because Catherine has.
Go ahead.
I mean, if you're having a back and forth, let's
look at his actual record. For example, his recent statement saying, "Oh, we're going to make insurers cover IVF." You know that he led the initiative to repeal Obamacare, which got rid of all essential health benefits, all requirements for insurers to cover any sort of health care. That would include IVF.
Right.
Beyond that, there was a bill that Democrats proposed to protect IVF.
A sham vote, by the way.
We gotta go.
I need to
Guys,
because
it did not get
we
rid
are
of
at the
all
end
essential
of the
health
show, guys.
protections.
We gotta go. I'm sorry to say.
He's for IVF.
So again, a sham bill. I wanna. What a freaking loser. Somebody who's from Kentucky. I mean, I was not familiar with Scott Jennings prior to this. Apparently, he worked for President Bush in some capacity. What a loser. I want her constantly on this show, humiliating this guy on live TV, bringing him to the point of tears. He is such a disgrace, such a dishonest, pathetic actor. I hear what Donald Trump says. He's a father of IVF. I listen to his words. And Catherine Rampell comes up, well, yeah, but what about his record? Actions are worth much more than words, right? They speak louder than words. And Donald Trump's actions when he was president and the leader of the Republican Party stand in stark contrast to somebody who supports in vitro fertilization. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. So here's Rampell taking on, I think this is Congressman Waltz, a Republican, as a matter of fact. And here's their exchange.
For somebody who is scolded by the fryer,
if you want to talk regulation versus deregulation, and the fact that he deregulated 22 regulations for every one that have since been added back. It is a key driver of inflation. It absolutely is. These small businesses that have to hire an army of lawyers and accountants to then provide the mountain of paperwork to regulatory agencies, it absolutely
look,
is.
I'm in favor of simplifying the regulatory system. That's mostly at the state and local level, not at the federal level. And besides, if you look at Donald Trump's regulatory record, there was a big paper, a big analysis that came out, I want to say in 2020 or 2021.
Okay, but if we want to talk about federal regulations at the EPA, at OSHA, at the Department of Labor.
Worker safety.
Worker safety is important.
Safety.
Again, these relentless fact checks from Rampell are so on point that actually, if you look at Donald Trump's deregulatory record, it's actually quite atrocious by conservative standards. Beautiful stuff. Now, the next few clips I'm going to show you are from a few days ago, and I don't think we discussed this, but even if we did, just a refresher because it was so damn good. Here was Catherine Rampell sparring with Scott Jennings again. And Scott Jennings said something truly remarkable about political leadership during crises like pandemics. See if you catch it.
As he does not want to negotiate. Also, the question I asked you is, where is the rest of the plan? Where is the rest of the economic plan?
Well, why don't you just look at his track record for the last, the term that he had? No inflation, fantastic wage growth. I mean, look, he actually sat in the seat at the White House.
2020.
You may not like what he did.
President
you may not like
Trump
him,
was president in 2020.
But I don't remember 9% inflation when he was
I remember 18% unemployment. I mean, I remember...
What happened when that was going on?
A pandemic that he bungled.
Are you saying he created the virus?
No, but he absolutely made it worse.
How?
By lying about the risk, by telling people not to get tested. Get tested.
You're saying he should have personally cured the virus as the president.
No, I'm saying he should have given his tests to Americans rather than to
She did not say that. I mean, but Scott, okay.
I'm sorry. This idea that somehow because Trump was the president that the virus has political proclivities and decided to prolong itself has been crazy to me since it's been floated.
You don't think leadership mattered at all?
The virus? No, I don't actually.
You don't?
I don't believe the virus listens to politicians.
You don't think it matters that Trump withheld various kinds of testing kits and PPE from states that were asking for it, and then he told them to go buy it themselves.
You think that was the masks? Is that what you think?
And then he outbid them for it, so they couldn't buy it. And then he sent it to Putin.
No, I was talking about virus.
I do.
So I love that. Scott Jennings, this moron, just said on live TV, I don't think leadership matters during a pandemic. What if this guy... No one should take any of his political opinions seriously, regardless of your political inclinations. If you think that during a crisis, not just a terrorist crisis, not just, a national security crisis, but a pandemic that's ravaging your country, if you genuinely believe political leadership is irrelevant, you're stupid. You are genuinely a dumb person if you believe that. I'm sorry. If anyone watching believes that, it applies to you too. Donald Trump, as the president of the United States, had a bully pulpit, which was bigger than any on earth. And as the chief executive of the federal government, had more individual authority and power than any person in this country. What Donald Trump could have done was say, hey, listen, I've received these disturbing intelligence reports from our intelligence agencies about a virus which is right now starting to ravage China. And it's going to come here, and we do need to hold together and take it seriously. And if we take it seriously early on, it might not only save lives, but a lot of heartache and a lot of economic consequences down the road. So let's unite as a country, Republican and Democrat, liberal, conservative, red state, blue state. This is 2020. It's an election year. The economy's doing great. We don't want to risk lives and risk economic fallout as a consequence of not taking this seriously. Let's follow the best medical advice of our medical advisors, of the CDC, of the NIH, my agencies, Republican politicians, Democratic politicians. Let's come together on this. And instead, he repeatedly, publicly lied about the virus, said it wouldn't come here. Then when it was here, said it would be over in a few days. Then when it started to kill people in masses, said it would be over by Easter and very few people would die. And as a consequence, by the time Trump left office, more than 400,000 Americans had died from COVID. And the consequences of Trump's disinformation, the fact that he didn't use the bully pulpit to rally Republican support, even though Democrats were willing to back him. Democrats worked with Trump to pass massive stimulus bills. Two, during 2020, an election year, knowing that Trump would get the credit for it. That's how good Democratic politicians are. That's how good they are. The fact that they were willing to work with a political opponent as repulsive as Trump during an election year where they wanted to defeat him, knowing he'd get the credit for all of their efforts. That's because Democratic politicians are morally superior to Republican politicians and certainly to Donald Trump. So Donald Trump had the bipartisanship. Democrats were willing and eager to work with him to manage this crisis. It was Trump who refused to play ball. Trump constantly undercut the authority, the credibility of his own medical advisors, people like Dr. Deborah Birx, people like Dr. Anthony Fauci and others as well. He constantly would retweet things like fire Fauci. He would feed into the impulses of his MAGA base who were pissed rather than trying to get them on board with taking the virus seriously. And again, even after Trump left office, the consequences of that rhetoric linger. Conservatives were less likely to get vaccinated, and as a consequence, were much more likely to get infected and die. There have been multiple analyses of this. Red counties that voted for Trump compared to blue counties that voted for Biden. The red counties had a much higher infection rate and death rate from COVID because they wouldn't get vaccinated, because they didn't take the virus seriously, and they were skeptical of the vaccine itself. And that's part of the reason why, even though Trump should be trying to take credit for the COVID vaccine, he can't do it because it's so politically unpopular with his MAGA base. So Scott Jennings is just wrong here, stupidly wrong. This guy should be made fun of in perpetuity for such a stupid take. And I should also say that if the shoe were on the other foot and it had been a Democrat in charge of a pandemic, you can bet your ass that Scott Jennings would be like, of course leadership matters. President Obama, President Clinton, President Biden, whoever the Democratic president happens to be, should absolutely be taking this stuff seriously because people's lives are at stake. But because it's a Republican, and Scott Jennings is a Republican, he doesn't care that Donald Trump's leadership was so atrocious. Super pathetic. Great on Catherine Rampell for, again, visibly triggering and humiliating this loser on live TV. And I hope we see it again as the election draws near. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.